Have you ever wondered why you haven't seen many knife EDC channels reviewing Balisongs? It's because while many of us have tons of experience handling what I would like to call regular folding knives, not many of us have any skill whatsoever when it comes to handling Balisongs. Not only is it an art, it is a bona fide skill. The ultimate reflection of dexterity, quick thinking, and control. It's dedication on display. And like most EDC channels, when it comes to Balisong flipping, I am a complete talentless hack. However, I'm a big fan of getting out of one's comfort zone and picking up old loves that fell by the wayside. So today we're going to be checking out not one, but 3 beginner level Balisongs from Nabalis. Let's go ahead and check it out. Hey, how's it going, everybody? If you're new here, welcome in, and if you've been here before, you know what to do. Smash the like button on the way in. I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny. We've got a shiny knife case here today, and it's filled with trainer Balisongs from our friends over at Nabalis. Big shout out and a thank you to them, not just for sending these my way, but for reigniting an old flame. Because here's the deal, guys. I really did try to get into Balisongs about 4 years ago, back in 2020 during the COVID lockdown. But I learned very quickly that this is one of those skills, and yes, it is definitely a skill that takes a little bit of practice. It takes some dedication, and it just kind of fell out with me. So with that being said, they sent 3 my way, including this case, including a couple stands, which, by the way, I think are pretty dang cool. And you can, of course, get these on their website. But I will have links to these down below, but they will not be affiliate links. And they will not be affiliate links because I want to make it absolutely clear that I'm not just here to advertise these knives. I'm actually trying to help out people that are new to the hobby, like myself, for example. I do consider myself to be a bit of a newbie, a bit of a beginner. And the reason why I decided to accept their invitation to review these Balisongs is because at the end of the day, I wanted to give a beginner's perspective and potentially help out others who are also seeking to get into the Balisong hobby, because it is really fun. And it's also really interesting. So with that being said, I also want to mention that my ability to flip these, as you will see, is not an indicator of how well these Balisongs can flip. It's just an indicator of how well I can flip them. Before doing my videos and stuff, I did look it up, and many people can flip these very well. So with that being said, I'm just looking to give my experience over the last week. I took my time. I made sure to flip each one of them. I made sure to do what I am capable of doing and also attempt to learn some new things along the way. And while I'm still working on learning some basic combos, I did make sure to take plenty of video showcasing not just the tricks that I can do, but also my failures, so that you could see exactly what that looks like. Now, to get us started, I'm going to go from least expensive to most expensive, starting with the Canyon. The Canyon is in fact the least expensive of the 3, just shy of $50 for this specific version. This is the full steel Balisong trainer, and it's a channel design, by the way. These are not actually sandwich handles. These are channeled and skeletonized handles. The specific variant has what they call a false blade, which is to say that it actually has no sharp edges, but it does retain the profile and the shape of an actual live blade. And you know, the more I look at this, the more I realize that if somebody was really dedicated, they could absolutely put this on a guided sharpening system or on a stone and give it a real live edge. So this is one of those knives where you could in fact take this all the way to a live edge if that's something that you desire. But in the meantime, you cannot cut yourself with this. I would fair to say that a butter knife would probably be sharper. Don't ask me how I know. You'll just have to take my word for it. A butter knife could definitely cut better than this, which is ultimately a good thing, because while you're training and while you're learning new things, you don't necessarily want to have to invest in bandages or, God forbid, the emergency room. Now, both the handles and the blade itself are made of 420 high carbon stainless steel, making this a full stainless steel Balisong design. One of the unique features of the Canyon is it has a very unique sound. It kind of sings a little bit. And when you flip it, it can actually produce a bit of a tuning fork sound. And I'm not necessarily sure if that is because of this unique milling here on these skeletonized handle scales, or maybe it has to do with the fully skeletonized design. Either way, I'm not sure, but it is a nice touch that could be entertaining to experience. The Canyon is also the heaviest of the three, coming in at 4.5 ounces, but this is no shocker. Again, it's a fully stainless build with an overall length just exceeding that 10-inch mark. In comparison to another fully stainless Balisong design like the original Kershaw Lucha, which almost weighs a full ounce heavier, by the way, I do think that the Canyon could absolutely be considered a lightweight Balisong amongst other steel construction competitors. Now, you can get this in two finishes. This one is the black acid finish, which is another great touch because I dropped these Balisongs egregiously over the span of the last week on the daily basis, and the finish of this Balisong held up extremely well. In fact, they all did. However, on the Canyon, you can't really tell that I dropped it at all, which really does wonders for my pride. No, instead, the injuries of my flipping failures instead reside on the inside. Something else that makes the Canyon kind of unique, at least to my untrained eyes, is that it's a pinless design. That's right, there's absolutely no pins. Unlike the other two Balisongs on the table, which do have Zen pins, this is in fact pinless. I do want to note that the Canyon was also the only one of the three that arrived with any blade play. Now, it's not something so serious that it got in the way of flipping the Bali, but it was something that I noticed. Granted, after a great amount of noobery and dropping all three far too often, all three Balisongs did at least develop at least some minor play over the span of a week, so maybe the other two trainers just spent that time catching up, but either way, it's kind of hard to say. As for my flipping experience, I would say that the Canyon is enjoyable to flip. You definitely notice the extra weight of the steel in comparison to the aluminum chassis builds on the other two Balis, but again, for a steel construction, it's still miles lighter than my Kershaw Lucha. Even so, it has a decent amount of grip during the index and thumb rolls, and on the basic aerial, which I can sometimes perform semi-reliably, also, that felt pretty easy to predict, which for a beginner like me is definitely important. For the money, for the $50 or $40 if you decide to get the one with the regular trainer blade, I do think that the Canyon is a great option for those trying to get into the hobby without spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars, but also while still staying as true as possible to flipping a live blade. Next up is the cheese. Yes, the cheese. Now, this is originally the one that I was interested in checking out from them. I wasn't actually aware that they were going to be sending the other two as well. The cheese is also not very expensive, coming in at just $75 and boasting no play, or at least that's what they advertise now. I will say this, it does have a tiny bit of play because, again, I dropped these while I was flipping them and practicing with them quite a lot. So that little bit of play is very, very minor, and people in the hobby might actually say that that would be what they would consider to be no play, but in this case, that's just what I'm reporting. When this was brand new out of the box, I actually did not witness or feel any play whatsoever. This is definitely one of those things that developed after dropping this a ton. The handle scales on this are also a channel aluminum design, but these are different because these actually have a yellow Teflon coating, and it's supposed to resemble, you guessed it, cheese. Now, unlike the other two trainers on the table, this one does come with a regular trainer blade, and as far as I'm aware, you cannot in fact get this with a false blade, but even if you could, I'm trying to figure out what that would even look like. No, in fact, I'm pretty certain that the whole idea behind the cheese is that it's supposed to be a harmless look. It's supposed to not look threatening. It's supposed to be something that you could in fact carry and flip in public without people deciding that they want to call the cops and report someone doing dangerous activities. No, instead we have this really nice looking yellow and white aesthetic, which is not to be confused with anything sharp or shiny. And I think in that realm, they've definitely succeeded. Now the action is running on bushings, just like the Canyon and the Wing, and it is incredibly smooth. This is very, very silky on that action. It came like this right out of the box, which is a good thing because as a beginner, I'm not necessarily very experienced in tuning Balisong bushing actions. Now, I've already mentioned that I have in fact dropped these quite a lot, but that being said, I can give you a firsthand accounting of how wear resistant this Teflon coating has been over the last week. There's no evident damage that I can see. And I think that on a trainer, while you may expect to beat on these a little bit more than on a live blade, it is really nice not to have your failures reflected back at you every time you go to pick it up. On the flip side, see what I did there? I did find that the Teflon coating was a bit slick. It's not very grippy, and to be honest, it did make me wish for more cheese texturing throughout all of the handles. Instead, we just have the cheese texturing here on the bite handle itself. And while that would have made it more difficult to discern, which is the bite handle and which is the safe handle during flipping, which is important for those of you who would like to transition to a live blade, that extra cheese texturing would have given it better grip and control, and the bite handle could have been easily identified by using something like one of these rubber bands. As it stands, I've seen others with much higher skill than myself flip these without issue, but again, as a beginner, I really need all the control and grip I can get, so it did feel like it was worth mentioning. Now, during flipping, I found that the smoothness of the action and the consistency of that action was very much enjoyable. Despite the issues I had coming to grips with the lack of texturing on the handles, I think that overall the consistency plays a very large role in gaining confidence in mastering known tricks and tackling new ones as well. Some might call this a meme bally, but I think that ultimately, given how nervous live butterfly knives can make the general public, this could be a great option for those who want to flip in public without worrying about bystander Karens calling the cops. This is the live your life, it's not so serious trainer that I think many beginners would definitely enjoy in their arsenal. And finally, we have probably what is, most definitely my most favorite of the three, and this is the Wing, and it's easily the most expensive of the three options, but by Balisong standards, still affordable, coming in at $139, although I think at the time of recording this, you can actually get a discount and get it for like $13 off, so don't quote me, just go ahead and check out the link. Now, just like with the Canyon, the Wing features a false edge blade that very closely resembles a live blade, and again, I think if somebody really wanted to turn this one into that, it wouldn't be hard to achieve. Especially with a guided sharpening system, those have become very popular. And even without a guided sharpening system, I would warn potential buyers that the tip of this is not dull, and it's actually still capable of slight stabs if you accidentally catch the business end of the tip during tricks like, I don't know, like with an aerial. Ask me how I know. That said, the edge itself is far from being a live edge, but this isn't one that I'd suggest playing just the tip with either. The Wing showcases some absolutely gorgeous texturing on the aluminum 7075 hard coat anodized channeled handles that provides the best grip of all three options shown today. And despite not being Teflon coated, the hard coat ano also held up exceedingly well during my week of testing. That said, if you look closely, while the ano was not broken, you can see tiny nicks from when I would frequently drop this during my tests. It doesn't show up on camera very well, but trust me, it's definitely there, but I would have to look very closely. Overall, the aesthetic held up even to the levels of abuse that I submitted it to. Now, the action is also running on bushings and Zen pins and is exceptional. I'm not sure whether it's because of the added weight, but the speed in which you can get this blade flipping is straight addictive. And with the bright, colorful ano options tones that are available on the handles. It's also very pretty to look at as well. Despite dropping it the most, because this was easily the one that I spent the most time with, it also developed the least amount of play during that abuse that I put it through, which is highly commendable, and it reflects a big difference in overall quality versus the less expensive counterparts shown here today. The wing is not super heavy either, but it still maintains a great weight, coming in around 4.1, 4.2 ounces, so ever so slightly heavier than the cheese, but not as heavy as the Canyon. This is a difference maker for a beginner like myself, because something that is rarely accounted for when you are starting to train in Balisong flipping is finger and hand fatigue. So it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways, the weight is perfect on the trainer, especially since the wing comes in longest at 10.3 inches long with a slight weight bias towards the handles. My flipping experience with this Balisong was actually definitely my favorite out of the three. The handles provided decent grip and control, not that it stopped me from finding a way to drop it, but I also felt myself gravitating more towards the wing than the Canyon or the cheese. It has a way of feeling more mature, while the colors and the handles remind you at the same time that you're doing it because it's fun. The only downside was the several times I accidentally hit myself with the pokey tip, but not because the blade itself is sharp. 99% of the time, it's not enough to do any real or serious damage. Now, if you made it this far despite watching me spam the same 3 or 4 basic beginner level moves, I want you to know that I appreciate you. Making this episode was far from easy for me, because in many ways it pushed me out of my desktop review style comfort zone. I am fully aware that I am not a skilled Balisong flipper, regardless of how much I aspire to learn to be one, but I do think that oftentimes those who are skilled can overlook things that are important to beginners. So if you are just starting to learn how to flip, know that I made this episode with you in mind. Feel free to roast me in the comment section as a reminder that this is all for fun and it's not so serious. Lastly, I'd like to thank Nabalis again. I hadn't realized how much I had missed the challenge of Balisong flipping, and this was just the spark I needed to pick up once again and work towards learning new things and challenging myself every day. That said, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. And if you're at all interested in watching some of my regular knife and EDC content, feel free to click on one of the videos that pops up next.